Well, it's been a remarkable development. You know, for 60 years, U.S. Administrations, both Republican and Democratic, thought that European integration should be promoted because it was good for Europe and it was good for the United States, including good for U.S. business, by the way, which always sees the opportunities of a single market in European integration. This administration has decided that European integration is bad, that the EU is in fact an enemy, that's the word that the President used, worse than a distraction, because it stands for things that this administration doesn't like, the multilateral rules-based system, and because it magnifies the leverage of the member states of Europe in a way the President finds is counterproductive, because he prefers to deal one-on-one in a transactional way with particular states of the EU. I think this is a terrible mistake. I think it's actually a historic mistake. And the reason I think that is because the EU is a natural partner of the United States on a lot of things. Despite all the tensions, despite all the problems, we are natural partners, and there's no hope for us to determine the rules of the road on trade, on digital economy, and on other things if we do not partner with our natural ally, the EU. If we are at war, so to speak, or we have frictions with the EU, our ability to do all of that is damaged.
Certainly echoes some comments we had from the French President Emmanuel Macron. He gave an interview to The Economist a few days ago, some controversial remarks, but let me just read you one of them. He said, "Europe is facing the brain death of NATO, and we can't rely on the United States to defend NATO allies." So it sounds to me like you more or less agree with the assessment that Mr. Emmanuel Macron has come to.
Well, a lot needs to change. I personally don't agree with his assessment of NATO. I think it remains the bedrock of transatlantic security. But I think he's making a broader point, which is an important one, and that is that we need to rediscover each other as our natural allies, and things need to change. And the EU does need to do things differently. Look, if you see the political program that's been now published by the incoming president of the European Commission, there's language in there that's never been used. A deep degree of concern about the world, about being squashed essentially between the two gorillas, China and the United States, and a call for the EU to mature and to use the tools it has at its disposal in trade and as a regulator, those two key areas, to protect and to project its interests better around the world. And also there's a defense component here as well. Calls for Europe to finally stand up on its own 2 feet. I don't think it's a discussion here about a European army is useful or likely, but behind that, efforts to become more efficient in the way Europe spends its money and to be more autonomous, not as dependent as before on the United States. Those things are new in many ways.
So a key moment for Europe as well in many respects. I want to take it back to the economic relationship between the US and Europe. This week was supposed to be a week where the US were going to make a decision on whether or not to impose auto tariffs on some European car makers. A report came out yesterday suggesting that they may look to delay it another 6 months. This question of applying tariffs and specifically targeting the auto industry, how damaging do you think that has been, the whole discussion from day one for the relationship between the two?
Very damaging. Even if the tariffs are never imposed, and I think they're unlikely to be imposed because they're not popular in Congress, it's one thing to impose tariffs on China where there's a bipartisan consensus that China is a big issue. It's nothing entirely to be imposing tariffs on cars on our European allies. But even if it doesn't happen, it's been extremely damaging. Why? Because the principle is that you can impose tariffs for national security reasons at a time of peace on imports from allies. That is an incredible argument. And by the way, it's now been replicated by many countries around the world who, not surprisingly, are saying, well, we kind of like this industry, we want to protect it, and we'll invoke national security exemption from the WTO rules of free trade. Saudi Arabia's done it with Qatar in terms of its blockade. Russia has done it in its dispute with Ukraine. And luckily the WTO has ruled recently that you don't have a free pass. You have to actually justify that exemption. You just can't say anything falls within it. So I think it's very damaging for the United States to start saying, you know what, we have a free pass to decide what we want to do. In the case of Boeing Airbus, we decide to work within the terms of the rules, but in most cases we say we're going to work outside the rules and do whatever we want. That's the way of the jungle.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.